Our Southern Oregon office, we have Carly Kruger joining us to take us through our Ignite for Keep Every Lead. She's been in the real estate industry for 9 years. And like I said, she operates out of the Southern Oregon office. I'll kind of leave it to her to expand on her bio a little bit further if she would like. Carly, just to let you know, I will be here in the background for the next little bit. A lot of times folks do tend to join up into, 15, 20 minutes in, depending. And so
Mhm.
I'll stay back here and admit folks as they kind of come in.
Okay, awesome. Well,
So,
thanks, Erin.
yeah, go ahead and take it away.
Okie dokie. Well, welcome everybody. So as Erin mentioned, my name is Carly Kruger. I've been a realtor for 9 years, and I've been with KW that entire 9 years. I really, really believe in our Ignite program, and that's part of why I'm here today. I have had times where I've taught the entire course, but that was years ago, and since then, this is actually my first time having it be completely virtual. So I appreciate your patience as we all kind of go through this together. This will be, like I said, my first time via Zoom. My husband and I work together as a team, and if anybody is working with a relative or a family member or a spouse, it has some unique challenges, and you're welcome to keep my contact information and ask me questions. So, okay, let me share my screen with you so we can get started. And I'm assuming everybody has your packets with you. And let me just, okay, here we go. All right. And just so I get kind of a better feel for where people are at, is this, has anybody in here taken like the entire Ignite course before? Okay, nice. And then has anybody in here taken at least some parts of Ignite before? I mean, other than this round? So maybe in a previous round. Okay. So one other part.
We've got two that have been in previous rounds. Well, and then a couple that are kind of were on the tail end of the last one and then started at the beginning of this one, and then some guests that aren't even KW that are kind of just seeing what Ignite's all about.
Awesome.
So
Great.
yeah, it kind of runs the gamut.
Nice. Okay. It's just helpful for me to get a scope of what we're doing here. So this material is going to be very exciting and helpful, and your participation is going to play a big role in what we all get out of it as well. So I do encourage you, when we have those opportunities, to just go ahead and unmute and hop in on the conversation. And this is a really safe place, so feel free to share your experiences and questions, and we'll have fun together. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. So today is the first day of lead follow-up, which is part of our third segment of Ignite. We've covered becoming the real estate expert of choice by building your value proposition. We also covered generating leads through prospecting and marketing. Today, our focus now switches to lead follow-up, where you can make or break your business. And I can attest that is so true. Generating a lead can take almost no time at all. The important aspect is keeping that lead in your grasp until they are ready to do business with you. It can possibly take up to 10 years. So Erin was talking about, putting leads in our systems, and it might take some months, but it can take years too. And it's good to have a good plan for that. This next segment of Ignite will help you turn a possible business into a probable business, and then probable business into a profitable business. You're going to engage in a daily success system after each lesson that will establish the core activities for your entire real estate career. So are we ready for that? Nice. So let's briefly just go over the topics for lead follow-up. So we have Keep Every Lead, which is today. follow up with leads. And then 12 is strengthen relationships. And 13, qualify potential buyers and sellers. The leads follow-up process is essential to converting leads to business from the moment you have captured a lead and put it in your database. Before we begin, let's hear about progress with the success system. If your birthday falls between January and March, I don't know how much diversity we have in birthdays here, but raise your hand and I'll call on you to share. And keep in mind, this is not about perfection, but about progress. So what challenges has anybody encountered? Anybody have birthdays in that time frame? You know, since we have such a small class, maybe I'm just going to open it up for anybody who's willing to share on that. Does anybody have challenges that you want to?
Well, I have a problem that I feel that I'm kind of pushing on my leads when I keep text them or call them, whatever the subject. But I feel that kind of enforce myself
so it's kind of like you hesitate because you feel like the more you show up, the pushier it's going to seem. Does anybody else feel that same way? Okay. Well, I would definitely, one of the interesting things is, so, I mean, I definitely understand that feeling on a personal level. I just think it's interesting over the course of time, when I come into contact with other affiliates or other business owners, I actually get to where I want to be like closed by them. I want them to want my business and it's actually for me like been a sign of if I feel like if they really have something to offer, that they want to talk to me and that they want to put themselves out there to get my business. It actually makes me believe in them more. And we will be talking about items of value today too, or touching them with value. And I think that's also a really important part of it is realizing that we can come to them with items or thoughts or ideas that are truly of value to them that will help them in their process too. So was everyone able to meet with your accountability partner? Is that a yes? Or are we avoiding? Any ahas from that? Well, I do want to thank you for sharing your challenges. And just so I know I'm saying it right, Nagam, is that how I say your name? Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to share challenges or even wins that they feel they've been having with your success system?
I don't know if it's specifically a challenge, but just it's been interesting for me trying to figure out specifically what my niche might be and how to market to those specific people so that all my outreach efforts aren't just kind of at random and that they might actually have impact for lead generation or business later on down the road. Like making sure that I have a plan for what I'm doing each week or even each day as far as, who do I want to reach? What's that specific person? And is what I'm doing going to make that connection?
Okay, I can definitely appreciate that as well. If you don't mind me asking a question, and am I saying your name correctly if I say Maya?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maya.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thought on all of that, because sometimes we want to figure out the whole path before we take a step, right? Yeah. And I'm curious if sometimes that stops you then from taking a step if you feel like you don't see that whole path.
Oh, sorry. I would say for me, definitely, that's something to get past and work past because as long as you're doing something, like I feel like especially when you're first starting your business, that's 100% better than just thinking about what you're going to do and then not doing anything. But it
Right.
is it is like, where do you find that happy medium? Like take that step, but take it intentionally. But yes, in answer to your question, absolutely. I feel like that's kind of a limiting self-belief, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, Maya, because I feel like it's a lot more powerful actually coming from you, exactly what you just said of taking any step than if I were to just sort of say that. So I just want to encourage anybody else who might be feeling, kind of like they're not sure about each and every step or don't know if the path is completely laid out, that I think it's going to end up serving your business more strongly to just be taking some steps at least. All right. Well, for the good of the whole, anybody else have anything to add on this? Okay, we'll move along. So our agenda today, we're going to be covering what is lead follow-up, how to lead follow-up, post lead follow-up. We're going to do some recap in Auth-Oz, and we're going to look at our daily success system. By the end of the day, you'll be able to describe the benefits of establishing a system of lead follow-up. We're going to be able to apply the 19 to Connect Touch campaign with leads. And we're going to know the importance of cementing the relationship with our leads. We're going to do that to start thinking about what we're going to learn today. And let's consider questions that we might have about lead follow-up. Sorry, I'm just making sure this is stuff that we want to be talking about. So we can also look back and think back on what we've learned in previous sessions, and especially in the last segment of Ignite, lead generation. Have you guys been finding that you're able to take directly what you're learning in Ignite and build at least some blocks, if not just like follow every single detail, but at least take some blocks and apply them to what you're doing? Okay, good. So actually this is one where I'm assuming you guys have done some partnering in this group before, but it actually asks us to have a partner and have a 5-minute conversation about questions and what you'd like to learn. Have you guys done partnering via Zoom before? Okay, that's okay. This is just one of those things that I'm learning as I do it only on Zoom here. So I'm assuming that was written for an in-person class. So let's actually just together take a little time to share our one thing that, sorry, that part doesn't make sense for us. Okay, so I want to convert this section into if we have any questions or thoughts about what we want to learn, to go ahead and just have a chance to share that right now with the group for this session, if we have questions or ideas that we want to learn in this session. Anybody show up for a specific reason other than it's just the next segment in Ignite?
Hi, so my name is Debs, and unfortunately, I feel like I'm coming in the middle of something really big. I was just hoping
Okay.
for lead follow-up. So, yeah, I'm gonna just back off here, and I really appreciate your time. You guys keep going with your program, and thank you so much. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Debs. Anybody want to follow that up with part of what you feel you're here for? So I know that's kind of a big question. To have full transparency, part of why I showed up here today for this is because I chose this class to refresh in my own mind some of the ways that we can do lead follow-up and to actually have some camaraderie, and that we all have some challenges that just kind of being together might help us overcome them, or we might hear ideas we didn't think of before. And so I think that's a good opportunity in this class together. And sorry, I'm just getting to know all of us a little bit more, and I'll be with us in this session again for another one. But do most of you work virtually from home most of the time? Does anybody go into the office kind of regularly?
I have some classes that should be in person.
That should be in person?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. You mean you will have some that will be in person?
I have already. Yeah, every
okay.
Thursday I have classes. Yes.
That's awesome. And then just to kind of do some of your work, I mean, do people get to know each other like in your office? Are you connected with office mates and stuff?
It helped me a lot, and to be honest, I prefer classes in person more than
Mhm.
virtually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I don't mean that I'm not getting anything through virtual, but when you be in person, you touch the things. You could understand everything in time, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So that's much helpful a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I personally have a mix of feelings between, whether I like to have the virtual experience versus in person. And I think my main reason for bringing that up, and thank you for sharing, Nagam, but my main reason for bringing that up is that I do think it's good when we're developing, or as we're developing, or find a certain need that we might have to develop more in, is to actually, have that camaraderie with other agents too, maybe in person, but at least to use these opportunities if this is what we have. So it asked a question about accountability partners in just before this. And do you guys have accountability partners for activities?
No, for me, no.
Okay.
Just me.
So maybe that was part of another session, but I definitely think, like, when I was in the first few years, just like having other people around me that were similar, and having similar challenges, as well as, connecting with some seasoned agents too, made a really big difference, and just moving forward. So I'm just encouraging whatever we can take from something like that, because we might feel limited by the virtual connection, but let's see if we can just use this time and this experience to the fullest to see if we can gain some of that. So I just want to reiterate, this is a really good opportunity to share your challenges and keep staying open. I've really appreciated so far what you guys have shared. So as we go through the content today, let's listen to hear if your questions. I think sometimes, like, we don't even know what we don't know, so it becomes hard to actually articulate and ask a question. And I just want to give you permission to even just kind of muddle through things and try the best you can to ask it, even if you're not even sure what you're asking, if that makes sense. So let's turn to the lead follow-up page in our participant guide. Does everybody have like a printout, or are some people looking online? All right. It's okay if you don't have a printout. I was just curious. So first, let's review. Who can recall how we define a lead? Anybody want to volunteer? I'm just giving us lots of time, because sometimes I feel people are shy. So yeah, go ahead, Maya. You unmuted for a second. Oh, for some reason, we can't hear you. Okay, well, Maya's getting that sorted out. Sorry, Maya. Anybody else want to talk about how we define what a lead is?
I think it's a lead is just like someone who's interested in your services, right? Something kind of like that. Someone who
Okay.
you connect with and seems like they might want your services, and someone you can kind of follow up with in that way.
Okay. Do most people agree with that? All in favor? No, I'm just joking. But Jordan, I think that that's a good way of, what I love about what you just said is that we've connected with them, right? And then, yeah, that there's an interest there in our service. And, so we have it defined as someone who has shown interested in the services we offer and with whom we might have a one-way conversation, but in some way have connected, right? The goal of lead follow-up is to follow up with that lead with the goal of entering into a two-way conversation regarding that. And I think to go back to your point, Nagam, is where you feel like maybe they're like you're pushing yourself or something on them by continuing to follow up, is that I definitely have
I do
people.
real estate.
Hi, Tristan. I'm gonna mute us here. Is that sometimes the people we meet might be actually interested in our services, but if we kind of think about our own lives and our own businesses and kind of our own day-to-day, I mean, I'm not going to call anybody out here or ask you to have to reveal too much, but how many people feel like 100% put together all the time and like we're just ready to deal with every little thing that life brings us during the day? I have to admit, I don't quite feel that way, right? We might use tools to help us get through some of it, but I kind of think that that's how most people feel about their days. And on days where I just feel like I have so much going on, I might actually be interested in somebody's service, but maybe not right now, right? Maybe just not at the moment. And I'm not ready to enter that two-way conversation. And I actually don't want them to fall off my radar, but I need them to actually stay on my radar because I'm just not ready to keep them on my radar myself. I've got too much going on. Have you guys ever experienced that with any like with anybody who might offer a service that you would be interested in, but maybe weren't at the moment you met them? Feel free to share like an experience like that. I think it's helpful for us to hear anything like that, because I think it's interesting to think about that from the side of like a consumer versus just thinking about being the one providing the service.
So I would like to share my thoughts. Me as a new brand, I feel that people still can't trust me as a worth agent, as an agent can do his job in a proper way. So that's one of the problem that I think they think about me. So as a new agent, still we have a lot of competition between other agents that we have to prove ourselves, and we could do it. So that's one of the things that I'm facing.
Okay. Thank you, Nagam. So I actually feel like that to bring a different kind of perspective on that, to be quite honest, the number of agents who have even been doing it for a long time and really have all of their systems up and running and are really kind of having that dialed in, to be honest, it probably gets pretty small, like percentage wise, as people have been in the business. And what actually tends to happen is the habits that we start right now is what we keep almost like indefinitely, and unless we make a really specific point to change those habits. And human nature often lends itself to not wanting to change some of the habits, especially if we feel like we're getting by without it. And so there can be a tendency for people who might be experiencing some success to not actually keep sharpening their sword a little bit. And so I would just say, keep that in mind, because if we show up as somebody ready to serve, who's ready to take on a project, who's ready to take on those individuals' unique circumstances, because every transaction has some things that are the same, but really it's about the people who are unique in our life and who come to us, and being able to address them as people. So when we show up like that for people, that makes a big impression, no matter how long other people might have been in the business. If they don't have that sharpened sword or sharpened edge, and they're just sort of going through the motions, which I'm not downplaying successful agents. Not everybody out there who's been in the business for a long time has really kept that sharp edge, or maybe even started it, right? So that's why actually a class like this is so important, because we really do have the opportunity to be putting some clear tools to use and some systems to use, and to really build those systems right from the beginning, so that you don't find yourself, 5 years, 10 years down the road without having really pushed that rock forward in some of those. Okay, so does lead follow-up only apply to a lead? I think that's an interesting question. And I want to qualify. Well, I'm going to leave the question like that if anybody wants to chime in. Hi, Tristan, welcome. So I'm gonna just keep going through this, because I think it's going to help answer that question. So no, not every person in our database, whether a lead or a contact, requires follow-up so that when they have a real estate need, they immediately think of you. Oh, no, every person does need that. Sorry, I was like, what? So basically what they're saying is, well, does anybody want to recap that instead of me just talking about it? Like, what do they mean? What do they mean by that? If we're following up with everybody, what opportunity does that give us that maybe we don't have if we aren't following up with everybody? I mean, so maybe we've made a contact and they haven't necessarily raised their hand in the same way somebody else has, but if we keep following up with both of those types, what opportunities might we find by doing so?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
Okay.
you, Maya.
Very good. In my own experience, I think that a lot of the time, if I meet someone and they're not, in the stage of buying or selling or being interested in a transaction in the future, of course, a couple of years down the road, if you stay in contact with them just in a kind of unobtrusive and valuable way, they might turn into a lead. And what I found a lot is people who aren't leads immediately, they might have connections to like service providers, for example, or their sphere, someone might be looking to buy or sell. Like, I feel like if you bring value to the conversation, almost anyone you meet can either have a connection that you can use to build your business and help people in your sphere, or they'll have a connection to someone who could be a lead.
Yep, absolutely. So like by maintaining those connections, thank you, Maya, that we might uncover leads that we didn't even see to begin with, just by staying in touch. And they may have somebody who needs to buy and sell, buy or sell, even if they themselves aren't in that position. So by continuing to add value on that front, we're reaching the people they know as well. Are the people you've put in your database only in your real estate database? Are you the only real estate agent they know? So not likely. These are questions I'm going through for the sake of us to think about, but how many other real estate databases are they in? Of course, we don't know that. But how do we ensure that when they think of real estate, they immediately think of us? That's our goal, right? So they might be in other databases, especially if people click on, a Zillow or some other real estate website. If they click to talk with an agent, there might be people with a system to follow up with those leads, right? But how do we ensure that the people that we are in contact with think of us over other people? Anybody have some thoughts on that? Like what makes us stand out?
Our
Yes.
first that initial impression is always what goes the longest.
Okay, I like that. First impression. And do you have thoughts on like what you feel, how we kind of aim to make that first impression, that you feel like certain characteristics tend to stick for them?
I would say, like, for me personally, whenever I meet somebody who's just happy, genuinely happy, you have to be genuine about it, because nowadays people can tell when you're not genuine. People can tell when you're just selling. So you have to be genuine and show you love what you do, because if you love what you do, you're going to go that extra mile for someone. And that's what everybody wants, to receive that extra mile, but also not have to pay for it in a way, I want to say.
Okay. I like that. Anybody else have any thoughts on how we make sure they immediately think of us and the kind of impression we make on them? So, yeah, Tristan, go for it.
I was going to say just a consistent follow-up, and branding is a huge thing as well. So really understanding and getting your brand out there, but also just being that consistent person that they see, whether it be every other week or monthly, whatever it is, just them consistently seeing you is definitely going to be a huge factor for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Nagam, I believe you were going to unmute too.
Yeah, people around my sphere, people who know me already, they will feel much comfortable, and they know that I will do it honestly. And that might help a lot, that through your previous reputation, that they will get you easily. They know you are genuine and honest.
Yeah, so we've mentioned a lot of characteristics, or a number of characteristics that I think really do make a difference. And I think that what Tristan mentioned too is consistency. So it's like we want to have these characteristics and we want them to be consistent, right? And to consistently put it out there. But I also just wanted to add, I wanted to offer this up, is sometimes I see people kind of in these big real estate groups online or in other scenarios asking a question. And I think this is kind of like a life question. I used to be a musician, or I'm still a musician, but I used to be a musician by kind of trade prior to getting into real estate. And there's a whole thing about an artist and how do they stand out. I was a pianist, and there's a million pianists in the world. So, and I was a singer, and there's a million singers in the world. But I really came to a point, and I think it's true in our businesses too, where I realized that this question of how do we stand out? Are we unique? And maybe even Maya, how you were talking about finding our niche, is that I think the best way for us to stand out is by being exactly who we are, because nobody else is exactly like us. We might have to work at drawing out those qualities and being able to, like Tristan talked about, like kind of put our brand out there, but our brand really is about what we stand for. right? And what our business stands for and what makes us passionate about what we do and why we do it and what we do in our life. And that's who we are. And so I think that our honesty and all of that about that shows through when we put that out there. So I just want to encourage us to who we each are, who you are, is how we stand out the best we can. And we might need to, I'm an introvert. I can easily be who I am all by myself, in my own little shell or behind the piano or whatever. But so there does need to also be that communication where somehow we show who we are too. I mean, I could even showcase that I'm an introvert, right? But at some point I have to actually talk about it and work to connect with people about it. Does anybody else have any thoughts that you want to share before we move on? Okay, thank you so much for your discussion. So let's review this graphic and what it means when it comes to lead follow-up. Everyone in our database lives on some point along the waves. At the top of a wave is when they purchase a house. The day after they buy a house, they move down the wave and continue until they begin to think about a new house. Over someone's lifetime, they have the potential to buy 1, 2, 3, or more houses. The distance between those purchases is on average anywhere between 7 and 10 years. So if I gave you a lead close to the top of the wave, what would you perceive about the quality of that lead? And just to say, not the quality of the person, but the quality of the lead in terms of using our services for that. Good or bad quality lead in terms of calling on us for our services?
Near the top of the wave, they would probably be just about ready for us to make more consistent contact and get ready to help them move, find their new house, sell their house.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, if they're getting close to that, then their quality is probably up, right? So what if I gave you a lead right after they purchased a house?
You probably, I mean, they're not a low quality lead, but they're not going to be looking for a new transaction soon. I mean, what's the best way to stay in contact with them at that point?
So there's a lot of ways to follow up with them after a purchase. And we can talk about some of that, but it's obviously not about just getting them into a house or getting them to pass selling. And it can make a difference whether they, have just bought or sold in terms of our transaction, and then if they stayed in the area or have left the area too, if they were selling. But there's definitely ways to stay in contact, but bringing value. So almost all of the clients that we, have helped buy, they're still looking at the market. They're still interested in how their asset is holding its value or not. And so there's just being somebody who can help continue that conversation of like, okay, now that we've, purchased this, here's what the market's doing, or here's what's happening in the world, or in terms of just staying in touch. Some people also hold events and stuff like that are enjoyable, but it does make a difference when they know that you continue to think about them. So you might even think more on the personal level too, of how we stay in touch, and that you actually care about them as a person. That actually is a real thing that goes a long ways. So, and that's a good question. I mean, we always want to be thinking about that too. That's not a one-time answer. Like, so what works for us in like 1 year or something might not be working the same and for, after 5 years, because maybe the world has changed. I mean, what have we all recently, you know, in the past several years gone through that where kind of the whole world changed a little bit? COVID, right? Everything changed. So people were doing touches with something like that in mind. So we can always use some current events on that. So there, we might perceive, you know, somebody who had just purchased as kind of like a bad lead. However, there are no bad leads. Every lead is on the wave somewhere. This lead might not be hot right now, but they are future potential, and they very well may know somebody who is a hot lead. So as a real estate agent, following up with all leads with frequency and intensity is the key to remaining in close emotional proximity. So as any lead approaches the top of a wave and are ready to purchase, they think of you. This is where the importance and value of lead follow-up comes into play. So let's think of the leads that enter your database through lead generation as your possible business. Lead follow-up helps turn the leads from possible business into probable business, and the end goal of being a profitable business. And I actually just really want to comment on, I want to emphasize that profitable business part, because we are in a people-oriented business, and I do believe that a lot of us get into this with a servant's heart and with the intention of serving our clients. And I think sometimes we can argue with ourselves about whether we're, you know, when it comes to being profitable, whether that means we're just after money, or if we're really with a servant's heart and wanting to serve our people, is it okay to care about money still? And they have to work hand in hand. We have to stay in business in order to have a service to provide, right? So I want to invite you to embrace that profitable business part. I really believe that, you know, a lot of people who are in businesses for themselves, especially because nobody's just granting us a paycheck, that sometimes some of what holds us back is our relationship with money and how we think about it. So I just want to take a side note and just encourage us to embrace the profitable business side. So the 2021 National Association of Realtors Profile of Home Buyers and Sellers details the opportunity that lead follow-up can provide to your business. They collected research that shows that when selecting an agent to use, 73% of buyers only talked to one agent, and 82% of sellers only contacted one agent. So we might have this idea, and yes, I've been part of where sometimes somebody's interviewing a whole slew of agents, or maybe a few, but most buyers and sellers out there are talking to one. And so I think, Heather, like what you mentioned too, is like that first impression can make a big deal, but even more importantly, in some ways, than what kind of impression we make, obviously what we want it to be good, is that we are there to make the impression, right? That we're actually making those connections with people. Since the data shows that most buyers and sellers only talk to one agent before deciding to do business with them, what will you do to ensure that you are that one agent for everyone in your database? So we're exploring answers to that, right? But so this concept of taking up space in people's minds through staying in close emotional proximity to them is called mind share. Emotional proximity is a result of engaging in the touches with your database. So thinking back to the day you learned about lead generation, what touches are the strongest when it comes to relationship building? And what are the weakest? Anybody have some thoughts on that, or what your experiences have been with that, the strongest and the weakest when it comes to relationship building?
I want to say that I think a really strong relationship can be built with someone who you can find a common ground with. Like, even for example, if you cheer for the same sports team, then you can build a conversation around that and kind of start to build a relationship around just one thing that you can talk with them about. Whereas I feel like a weak emotional connection would be obviously the opposite, where it's someone who you can't really connect with, and you just don't understand kind of their life or what they think, like, if that makes sense. But I feel like that's something that's been important for me, is when I meet everyone, think about like, oh, they have a dog. I've had dogs in my life. That's a conversation topic. Like, where can we meet in the middle so that they perceive me and that I act as their friend?
Yeah, absolutely. People can think about kind of what you're thinking about, but Maya, that just sort of struck up for me. Like, one of my dreams when I used to be teaching music, which I did for 16 years, by the way, prior to getting into real estate, was that I sort of had this concept of building an entire school where people learn math, people learn, language and all the subjects, but from the lens of music. And I sort of think of what you were just talking about, Maya, of that, finding that connection for people of something they can relate to can give us the opportunity to kind of look at all the facets that we might help them sort of utilize our services, even through that one connection on something. And so I guess, like, on that note, really quickly too, as I once heard somebody talking about kind of a niche, and that sometimes people hesitate to get too buckled into one. And I think there's something to be said for that. But at the same time, when I think anytime we show up with organization and focus, and as somebody who knows what they're talking about, even if it's relating specifically kind of on one thing, and that's how we get our foot in the door, kind of, that it draws the attention of other people, even if they don't relate to the particular thing that might have started that relationship. So others may look and they just see somebody servicing that individual really well, regardless of whether they relate to being a dog owner, even, if that makes sense. Anybody else have some thoughts to share on that in terms of weakest and strongest when it comes to relationship building? Okay, so meeting in person and a phone call are the touches that will have the greatest impact on the relationships you are building. Email and text are weaker related to forming connections and bonds. While you will lead follow-up using a variety of touches, it's important to keep in mind which ones will be most effective as you follow up. So, out of curiosity, how many people love talking on the phone? Okay, Tristan, I might have pegged you for that, Tristan. Just because I just can tell that probably comes naturally. But so one thing I just might mention on that. So I'm not a big phone talker myself. It's not like the thing that I'm super comfortable with. So that's not my natural sort of go-to. I much prefer email and text. And I am somebody who actually believes you can connect through those. It depends a little bit on the way we go about it and what we're sharing. I also simultaneously realize that making purposeful phone calls really does help cement the relationship on top of something like that. So, we do have a variety, and I think my biggest hesitation, which I'm only sharing because maybe somebody else can relate, is that I like, when I pick up the phone, to feel like I'm actually making a phone call of purpose and value, rather than just saying, who do you know, who's ready to buy or sell real estate, right? So I'm not like quick to pick up the phone to say that. But if I were picking up the phone to invite them to an event, or, you know, if we know something happened in their life, maybe I'll pick up the phone to ask them how they're doing, or mention the thing that I know happened in their life. But if we can make purposeful phone calls, I think it can help with that. I'm actually just curious, though, if you aren't first or second in their mind, you probably won't get the business, and that's from Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So, and that goes back to like how most people have only talked to one agent, right? So we do want to aim to be first, and people choose us for different reasons. But so let's share our ahas, because they are powerful and meaningful insights. And they come from reflection on the experiences we've had, or we share them because of that. When we share them out loud, we further strengthen the power of the aha, and we help fellow participants to have powerful ahas as well. So let's hear from a few of you what ahas you have had so far. And there's honestly like no pressure around this. Like I want to be here and hopefully, you know, of value, but I'm working on my own game here, and that's part of why I'm here. So I don't want you to feel pressured to be like, to comment necessarily like it has to be this big amazing thing about this session or whatever. But if there's even just a little thing that you feel clicked for you and your own understanding of something, or if you just got an insight, and I just mean during the course here, I don't mean necessarily from a particular point. Like sometimes I'm sitting in a class and I'm kind of letting things wash over me, and I've got my own dialogue going on, and something might click for me while I'm sitting in that class that wasn't even necessarily said. So I'm just including those as well. So if there's anything that you feel you've kind of clarified or have had an aha about during this time, we'd love to hear it. Yes, Jordan?
I'll say that the statistic you put out that most like buyers and sellers only work with one agent makes it feel a lot less like competitive almost.
Yeah.
More just like more about having a connection with someone's more likely to just come to you than like go out and interview a bunch of different agents. It just feels a lot less like pressure, I guess.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think like not to take away, so keep thinking about your ahas, but just on that note, Jordan, I think to like, for me, like an aha when you were just saying that is that it really kind of drives home for me that our competition really is with ourselves. So I shared that I'm an introvert, right? And what I just reflected back is that I have to push myself to be that person who actually shows up and gives myself the opportunity to make an impression at all, right? Because the chances are they are going to choose me if I'm the one who shows up first and stays in touch. And so it is less in that regard actually about the competition with the other people. I have to get over my own things that might hold me back. And sometimes that is like a perception of what it's like out there in this kind of like arena that we don't seem to understand all of the dynamics about, right? So, and that's part of why I say that, you know, there's a lot of agents out there who aren't putting these nuts and bolts in place. And so I just want to reiterate that again, because doing that already puts you head and shoulders in a lot of ways above most agents. And that's not to knock other agents. That's just to clarify that you are getting, you know, your game together. So anybody else want to share any other thoughts, any other little clicks or ahas that you feel you've had so far today? So thank you, Jordan, by the way. Okay. So I'm not trying to put pressure by just like sitting here staring at you. I just want, if you're feeling shy, I just like to give you a little time to get here. So, so just like your intention to be strategic with your lead generation efforts, you should be strategic with your lead follow-up efforts. Being thoughtful about how you follow up and leveraging the highest value touches that yield the greatest result will help you convert leads at a higher level. I just want to take a side note for a second, and this is like part of the conversation that we've had, but it just like reminds me for a second, has anybody heard that kind of story about two classes? I think of potters where they were doing like wheel turning pots, and one class was told to make as many as they possibly could, and the other class was told to make the most perfect pot that they could. And at the end of like a given time, the people, well, so the ones who made the most perfect kept like not making a full pot because they were like perfectionists and they wanted to just make it perfect and it was never good enough. And then the people who just made as many as they possibly could actually honed their skills during that time and ended up bringing a better product at the end than the ones whose only goal was to make a perfect pot. Has anybody heard that idea before? So I just think about that is because like I'm not trying to promote like just throwing stuff out there without thinking about it necessarily when we talk about this, but this idea of leveraging the highest value touches to yield the greatest results that we can convert at a higher level. Just for any perfectionists out there, I don't want us to get stuck, right? So I think it, like we were talking about earlier, I think, and Maya, you mentioned it, is just that to be in motion is the way we learn what gives us the highest touches and give them the highest value, right? So we just have to be in motion about that. So let's turn to the fortune. The fortune is in the follow-up Mindshare page in your participant guide. Follow-up is in the, sorry, the fortune is in the follow-up Mindshare. So Mindshare is gained through positioning yourself in front of your leads frequently with relevant and timely information. The goal is to open the door to two-way communication and adding, in addition to getting them to think about you anytime they think about real estate. Through Ignite, you have been introduced to two different systems that engage your leads and contacts and help you gain Mindshare. What are these systems? 19 to connect and 36 to convert. So we are on the fortune is in the follow-up, and I'm going to start moving faster in this stuff, but so I'm supposed to allow you to share your thinking here, but does anybody have anything to share in this section? I think I'm going to move to the next slide because it talks about it. So these are the recommended systems for touch campaigns you were first introduced to during the lead generation segment. With leads, we will specifically use 19 to connect. So how's it going? Well, let's keep moving. Sorry, I don't want to get stuck in too many things. So to review, 19 Connect is made up of 4 phone calls, 12 touches that are a monthly email, newsletter, market report, video, etc. So those can be after a closing too, right? So monthly email, newsletter, market report, video. A little side note for just a second, I just want to say, so we had a client, an older gentleman who moved to my area from California. He moved here by himself. He didn't have any family, and he didn't know the area very well. And my husband and I had started a newsletter that included like what to do in Southern Oregon type of like little note. And we weren't super consistent after a period of time, right? And that individual really noticed when we stopped doing it, because he almost like depended on the little notes that we gave him in there to help him get to know the area and to help him feel like he kind of knew some ideas on what to do, basically like with himself. And so I'm just mentioning that because you actually never know the importance it is for some people to put yourself out there like that. And you can include, all sorts of stuff in something like a newsletter. And so then part of that 19 Connect is also 2 touches related to promotional direct mail, and 1 touch that is a client event or party. And the intent of these touches is to be spread out over a calendar year, which equates to about 1 touch every 3 weeks. The goal of this communication is to establish a formal relationship and open 2-way communication. Keep in mind that this is just a list and not it's not prescriptive of the order you should complete them. For example, the 4 phone calls will have the greatest impact if you spread them out once a quarter. When do you think a lead should be added to your 19 to Connect touch campaign? So that's a question to you. When do we add them to the touch campaign? And by the way, I have like a gallon water jug, so I'm gonna keep drinking some of this as we go.
I would say you probably want to add them right away, like right as soon as you connect with them, just to start getting those messages in.
Yeah, bingo. So we want to add them to our touch campaign immediately. Be aware that when communicating with leads, it's speed to lead. This is how quickly you reach out after the lead has engaged with you. Your speed to lead should be rapid. Just think if that lead entered your database through a social media post, and consider how quickly that person has already moved on to engaging and interacting with other social media. What if the next account they interact with is also, I like how they always insert like a little bit of fear in here, but what if the next account they interact with is also a real estate agent? You should engage that lead before they contact another agent. I guess beyond like the sort of competitive part of that, I will just say like, it's important to, like, for us, like as somebody who's putting a business out there, it probably feels like a really big deal for us sometimes. And it really isn't, it doesn't have necessarily the same exact impact for them. Like they may not keep thinking about it the way we might be thinking about them, right? And so I think just keep that in mind, because we do want to remind them of who we are, and they might not be thinking about that by the time they meet somebody else. So, okay, so moving on. As we get started in our real estate career, and as we begin to generate leads during Ignite, there are some considerations we should be making regarding our own lead follow-up plan. Okay, so we're going to be using the lead follow-up best practices page in our participant guide. And we're going to use that for some brainstorming. You're going to have a little bit of time and some time to share. So we're going to have some time to think through this page and then some time to share it. And we can always come back to this page. You can, after we're done with this, and spend a little more time thinking about it. So don't get too stuck like on one particular spot. Maybe just let yourself write down what comes the most naturally for you. So some things to consider when following up with leads are to match the touch campaign with our strengths. to be prepared when you reach out with the reason you are calling or contacting the lead. For example, sending market information as the touch prior to the phone call. Make sure that each time we communicate with the lead, they know that we're in real estate, how to reach us and how to refer business to us. Know when you are going to, and that can be simple. It doesn't have to be this super formal thing, but like, oh, if you think of anybody or whatnot, I can always be reached on my cell phone or just something like that. Know when you are going to complete your daily lead follow-up tasks. This should be time blocked as a separate activity from your lead generation time. Set your personal standard for speed to lead. What time frame do you expect yourself to communicate with a lead? So without like making it like feel superficial for yourself, think about if you were like, we just had our house re-roofed, and I really appreciated, I wanted to hear what people had to offer. I even like got door knocked and I listened to their whole presentation because I happened to be in the market at the time. But think about like, if you actually were needing a service or thought you might at some point, what kind of response would you want from somebody? And set that as a standard for yourself. So let's look at this page. I'm going to give you some minutes to do it, and then we'll have a little time to discuss. So literally, I'm going to time at least 5 minutes. I might give us a little bit more. Anybody have any questions on what we're doing? Okay. Okay, are people wanting more time on this at the moment? Anybody wanting to share a particular part of this, like you have this burning need to share something from what you wrote down? So I actually I just wrote down some quick thoughts. So I mentioned that one of the reasons I'm here today is I like to sharpen my own skills too. So I actually went through some of this, and I'll spend more time with it again. But one thing that I thought that came up for me while I was reading this, and in the question, how am I using conversations to let the person know I'm in real estate, how to contact me, and how to refer business to me. I just wanted to actually reiterate something that was sort of touched upon actually by Nagam earlier, as feeling like we're pushing ourselves on people sometimes. And we can practice it in a way like actors practice scripts until they feel like it's them, right? And we can actually, like, they become the character, it becomes second nature. And we can do that same thing in a very like a smaller way when we have conversations with people. But I just wanted to like mention for us to remember that not all people that we come across are the type of person who are willing to take the reins on something. They're not necessarily willing to take the lead on something. And they actually are the type of person who need or want to be led into something. And that's actually a big population out there. So if we actually don't tell them those things, they might, for some reason, feel too shy to ask, well, how do I contact you? You know, or what do I do for your business? So I just want to put that out there, that it actually can be a thoughtful thing to lead people into that. That's not just self-promotion, and that's not just pushing ourselves on others. But did anybody else have anything that you felt like you might want to share in this section? How about strengths in working with people? Did that really resonate with anybody? And adapting your touches? Heather, I think I saw you shaking your head yes. Maya, are you wanting to share something?
I would just say that I know I already talked about this earlier, but I like to try and bring some sort of value to conversations whenever I possibly can. So kind of adapting any touches to, I mean, I know this is kind of an obvious one, but just to make sure that I'm giving them something of value, whether that's, you know, support in a time when they need it, or, you know, as we were talking about, kind of if there's a change in home values near where they live, kind of letting them know about that. Just something to let them know that, you know, I'm thinking of them, and I'm not just thinking of them in a business sense. So that we can have, as we were talking about as well, that emotional connection and that kind of ongoing conversation.
Good, thanks, Maya. Okay, anybody else have something they're burning to share here? Okay, I don't want to cut anybody off, but I'm going to keep moving here. So going forward, so now we have the chance to think about a design, and design our own 19 to Connect plan. So we'll be able to implement it easily. So let's review the details on this slide. And this, I just want to remind us that this is based on the best practices of top agents. And I've, you know, been in masterminds and stuff where I've heard people talk about this. And I just want to say before we look at this, that, so it's, you know, I've often heard people talk about these touch campaigns that they've developed, and I feel like it's sort of like genius, and I wish I could do it you know, just like so, but then it's like I get to a moment where I'm like, but this is their way and not my way, and I want it to feel like it's coming from me. And then for me personally, then sometimes I have a tendency to not implement anything, right? So I just want us to keep in mind that even if we look at like a plan or an outline, there are ways to personalize it still, where like we might use the outline, but it's still coming from us. We're thinking about how we can bring ourselves into it. Okay, so I'm just making sure so we're gonna actually, I just want to see if they're actually having us do these. But these are examples in the, oh, okay, so sorry, let me back up. So these are based on the top agents, and the first two columns are the magic of the plan, and nothing should be eliminated. So they're seeing how often it occurs and the platform or the type of touch, right? And these are examples. Oh, I see. The slide is the examples in the plan column. And you're welcome to use your own ideas in that. Like if you don't want to do birthday cards, think of something else to mail. But they're just giving you some ideas. There might be some costs associated with some of these. So do the best you can on some of these, or think along the lines of what you would be willing to spend on some of these. And keep in mind, it will be a process of fine tuning. You don't have to know you don't have to put a number there and then like from here forward, walk forth and do it exactly that, and know exactly what it's going to bring. This is going to be a process and we have to just start. So let's write ideas for each category. And consider the costs that you can imagine being associated. And ideally, we're going to schedule these in our calendar for once a month, like the once a month email / newsletter, twice a year promotional item, and one event. Events can be, yeah, so I like what they gave as an example here. They can be, obviously, we could spend thousands of dollars on an event, or we could spend almost like nothing on an event. And something like an organized neighborhood park cleanup, there's nothing saying if you organize that you would have to bring all like the trash bags. You know what I mean? I mean, you can do things super low cost. And so think about this. So we're going to take about 5 minutes to think about this, and then we'll talk about any questions that come up. Anybody have any questions before you start it? All right, go for it. Okay, so I fibbed about 5 minutes. We're already gonna keep going. So did anybody think of something in here that isn't mentioned here, but that just really, you felt really good about, that you want to share?
I like thinking about specifically the calls, texts, conversations, since that's something that kind of can take place every single day to some degree or another. For myself, I like to, depending on whether the contact is someone that I know a little bit, or whether it's just a professional contact, I like to send them maybe additionally each quarter, just like a check-in message that doesn't have to do with work, just saying like, where are you at? Tell me a little bit about what's going on with you, in addition to doing that high value contact of like providing value, asking for a referral, just to kind of make myself a little bit more present. And I mean, I don't know who else also feels the same way, but I really like connecting through text, email, DM, because that's how I prefer to be contacted. So this is something that I feel comfortable with doing quite a bit.
Okay, well, thank you, Maya. Anybody else burning to share?
Just to jump off of what Maya said, for like texts and stuff, just making sure to check in when any like leads or any of my sphere have like big events like weddings, having a baby, new job, stuff like that, and just making sure to be like, hey, congratulations, like thinking of you, just so they know that I'm like looking out for them, and that it puts me in their mind too.
Yeah, I think it's easy to undervalue in our minds how far some of those things go, but I think that like going ahead and doing those kinds of touches goes a really long ways for people, farther than we might know. So, all right, thanks, Jordan. Okay, we're going to keep moving. So when we have generated a lead and captured their information, we can then talk to them. If we haven't heard back and you don't know much about the person, then our communication will be broader, focusing on a range of values. This is where we'll communicate our value with our own value proposition. So we had that in day 4 of Ignite. You can even use the company, excuse me, or personal statistics. We know that people are more likely to respond when the message that we are communicating feels personal and relative to them. As you engage with your leads, you can uncover how to serve them better and learn what they're interested in. As you learn this, you segment your leads into more specific groups. So this is we'll cover that on day 6 of Ignite, and can communicate more detailed and value-based information. Relevant conversations have more value, are timely, and lead to a greater opportunity for future conversion. Look beyond the who when you contact a lead. The most basic way to start doing this is to craft your message based on the source the lead was generated from. So for example, if the lead came through a social media post about first-time homebuyers, sending them an investment property newsletter might not be the most relevant for their future motivation. Once the door is open for two-way communication, use conversations to find their motivation for engaging with our business, what their timeline is, and possibly other interests. Use this information to group them. So we're moving them like cattle into the barns. Just joking, but I think that the point of categorizing is to just help us know how to keep dealing with them in a way that personalizes them, right? Or personalizes our contact with them. So we're going to turn to our communicate with value page in our participant guide. Once we know the source of the lead, you can narrow your range of value. Knowing the source of the lead helps inform you on how you can pair a value with your communication. For example, a lead generated through a client referral will be communicated differently from a lead that came in from a phone call. Oh, one thing I just wanted to say is like, this is like all a lot of like heady stuff, right? It's like easy to kind of, we're going through all of this and it's just a lot of information. But I just want to reiterate again, is some of this stuff will just become more natural for you the more you just do it. So like some of our conversations might be a little bit like, we feel like we're like talking with this prescription thing that doesn't feel totally natural, but the more you do it, the more natural it's going to feel, and the more your sense of timing for offering something for the specific situation will become clear for you. So I just again want to encourage you to talk to people, to be in touch with them, even if it feels a little bit awkward or something to begin with. So you're going to be completing an activity by brainstorming statements and questions that you can use when communicating with different lead sources in your database. So these statements and questions can be incorporated into your 19 to Connect Touch campaigns. For the activity, you can work independently or set up small groups, but we're not going to do that. We're in a small group. So first, consider the lead sources that you already have in your database. If you aren't sure where to start with referrals, open houses, or social media, since those are activities you have learned about or engaged with since starting Ignite. So on the screen, you can also see a variety of possible lead sources you might have in your database. And some of you might already be, feeling like you're developing particular groups of people too. So think about that. But so next, actually, I feel like this didn't give us time to do this. Oh, okay. So we'll record our top lead sources that you're focusing on. So let's record them in this participant guide. And we're gonna brainstorm and write statements or questions that you could use when communicating with that segment of contacts. For example, for a call, you can write statements that can help uncover their motivation, like, why are you thinking about buying and selling? Tell me more. What will that do for you and your family? So just on these questions, again, I just want to encourage you to utilize them. Just through having been through KW stuff for 9 years now, like when I'm in some brainstorming sessions and leadership asks me like what's important to you about that, it really makes a difference in the conversation and how I feel like I could open up. And it's the same for how we approach even potential clients, like what's important for that? What's important to you about that? So that's kind of like what this question, what will that do for you and your family? You can think of some form of that, but we want to know why it matters to them, right? So we can dig in a little bit on that. So do you have any questions before starting the activity? We're going to take a few minutes to work on the lists. And we'll share a little bit after if anybody has something you want to share. Okay, sorry if I'm cutting some people short, so please do revisit this, but does anybody have anything that you want to share from this section of activity? Okay, I'm going to move us forward. So before we move on, any questions or big ahas over what we've learned since the last time we talked about ahas, or just anything that's standing out to you as something worth mentioning that you feel is clarified for you? I don't know if it's, sorry, I'm skipping ahead for just a second. So I think this page on turn ahas into achievement, like if you're having some, I want to just draw your attention in your booklet to this page to just ponder. So, and you can write stuff in as you think of something, even if you're not sharing it here. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. So let's turn to our post-lead follow-up page in your participant guide. And once we follow up with the lead and we have permission to have that two-way conversation, what do you think happens with that person? It's kind of like this big open-ended question. So let's, I think where they're getting to is getting into our post-lead follow-up, right? So after we obtain permission to have the two-way conversation, the lead then becomes a contact in our database. In Command, you will do this manually. This also means that you will move the lead from the 19 to connect touch campaign to the 36 to convert. You achieve the purpose of the 19 to connect, which was to connect with that lead, opening the door for a two-way conversation. Connecting with that lead does not necessarily mean they will do business with you or that your relationship is as strong as it could be. That is why you then continue into another touch campaign. Whether it is a lead or a contact in your database, every person should be on a touch campaign. This is how you'll gain and keep mind share while continuing to do all the jobs of a real estate agent. So a touch campaign, we can personalize those to some extent. And it's kind of like just having like the basics set up for us. But it's really important that we can automate, like make things automatic for us as much as possible, just because we get busy with life and business and other things. At the point where a lead opens the door for a two-way conversation, you must cement the relationship. Everyone in your database should be cemented right when you transition them to 36 to convert. So referring to this page that we're on, the post-lead follow-up, what do you think the purpose of the one to cement touch campaign is? Anybody have thoughts on that? So going back to actually like what you said, Heather, is the cement touch is a high value touch that offers a strong first impression and sets the tone for our relationship together. Whatever we choose here should serve more than one purpose. This touch should tell them about the service we provide. It should help set up a conversation for later. It should serve as a reminder of the interaction, and it should tell them how to refer business to us. So what are some options you could offer as your one to cement? And maybe you know of other agents offering something with success that inspires you. So let's take a couple of minutes to think about that and what our one to cement could be. I'm actually going to give us a few minutes. Okay, anybody have a one to cement that you're feeling super motivated by? Something that they're offering here is the Keller Inc. book, and just asking us, what if we offered your first home as a gift to first-time homebuyer leads? That's a thought, right? So that's a resource, and we can model after that too, even if it's not that book. So I've seen a lot of people offer like first-time homebuyer guides or something like that. Okay, so we're really into ahas when it comes to this material. So we have another opportunity to talk about that. But I'm going to keep going because we have this page where we can write that down. So as we wrap up our learning session and transition to our success system, let's do a quick review and capture ahas. What is lead follow-up? How to lead follow-up? Post-lead follow-up? What do you think is your call to action from today's lesson? So we're going to finish planning out our lead follow-up 19 to connect plan for any new leads added to our database. We're going to schedule our calendar for these activities. We're going to prepare our one to cement item of value that best represents you and have it ready to clinch those relationships that show interest in you and the service you provide. So in this aha section, I'm going to give us like 1 minute to write down, maybe read these questions and think about one that stands out to you. And let's just give one answer right now about that in your guide. So turn ahas into achievement page. So anybody have one of these questions that you felt resonated most with you at the moment and feel like sharing that with the Rest of us.
Today was super valuable, in especially just reminding me to act, take an action, even if it's not specifically exactly what you want it to be. That was amazing, and it's a really important reminder, and I'm glad that I got to check in today and just realize that and remember that again.
Thank you, Maya. I really appreciate that. Just like on a personal level, that it's a reminder for me as well, right? I think for all of us. So, and I'm really transparent about that. Like, my husband and I have had a successful business and we're doing well, but it's easy to just get comfortable in what we're doing and to stop, like I said, pushing that rock forward. So it's been a good reminder for me as well. So anybody else have something that they want to share in this section about HAS?
I do want to say I'm glad I'm not the only one that can't figure out the niche thing. Instead of pressuring myself about finding the niche, I think I'm just going to go with the flow, and eventually the niche will probably come to me. But I do hear about the niche starting off right away, that you need to know what it is to be successful. And I mean, that will improve you, but I don't think you really need to know right away.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, Heather. I think it's sort of like when we're kind of like growing up and thinking that we have to figure out what we want to be when we grow up, and just like this pressure around all of that, but we just like need to keep going, right? And maybe we just we want to be a good person, and that's all we know or whatever. So I appreciate that. I think that some of that stuff does clarify itself. I just want to give time. Does anybody else feel like seeing anything on this section? Okay, so I'm going to keep us going. So, sorry, I'm just seeing a slide that we're going to have to modify a little bit here. We're going to have to jump forward on this. So, I want you guys to revisit this page. I'm just trying to think of how you can best do that, mainly on your own. Because it's talking about doing some role play with this, and developing your success system through role play and conversations and practicing these every day. Are you guys involved in some role play and scripts practice? Or not? Sorry, I'm just like catching up with how some of this works for people starting out. Well, if you're not, I would suggest it just because it helps like get some of those conversations to be second nature for you. But make sure you're working on your success systems. And just review this. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move into our success system time, keeping in mind that the purpose is to develop the mindset, skills, and tools you need to build relationships and secure an appointment with a potential buyer or seller. Our daily success system tracker includes 10 conversations with our sphere, people you know and who know you, 10 contacts added to your database, their name, phone, address, and more, 10 handwritten notes, express gratitude or let people know you're in real estate and appreciate referrals, utilize the 10-5-1 model for social media engagement, and then other enrichment. So we'll be accomplishing many of these goals during your success system time. Keep doing these activities outside of class time. Yeah, so beyond what we do to what we might do together or what you might do during Ignite. And during the final update time, You may also write notes and engage with social media if time allows. But I must apologize that because you guys were scheduled to be done in 4 minutes. I'm gonna have to go through. We're not gonna do any calling today. Okay, sorry, so I'm clicking forward here. So just to sort of recap our daily lead generation, and I don't want to call anybody out, but does somebody have like your lead generation totally dialed in where you have it like in your calendar and you're consistently practicing it and going along in it? Or is it something that we're still working to get in there? The second one? Okay, so just in that, I'm just going to go over the components really quickly, that when we determine who we're going to connect with for the day we begin, we'll either write names on a conversation sheet or generate a list from our database of contacts, right? So we want to time block and then prepare. And then we take action. When we connect with people through conversation, this is our most valuable activity. Building relationships with people in our database takes up most of our lead generation time. And then to maintain, when you update contacts in your database, you will enter additional information you've learned from your conversations and follow up on any commitments you make. So just a note on that, if you're time blocking time to make these conversations, you also have to have enough time in that block or a separate block to actually make notes on what you learned during that conversation. Sorry, I'm going to keep moving us. Our success system together for today is over, and yet building your successful real estate business isn't. If you didn't complete all your conversations, added contacts, handwritten notes, or followed up on promises made, finish those on your own and with your accountability partner. Also, be sure to do your 10-5-1 social media engagement. And finally, what will you choose as your enrichment? What learning-based tactic will you engage today to make yourself the best agent you can be? So I think it's important to, like, we have all of these tools to dig into, right? But I think it's important to think along the lines of like 1 or 2 things. I'm not saying limit yourself, but focus on 1 or 2 things that you can take from this moment and decide that's going to be like your big rock. That's going to, if I don't do anything else, this is the thing I'm going to do to help myself be a better agent tomorrow or today, but to apply immediately. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to let you go in a timely way. If you want to stay after for about 5 minutes and have any ahas or questions that you want to share, I want to give you that time. But if you need to pop off, I totally understand and appreciate your time today.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I'm not going to be offended. I'm just sitting here until you guys, like, to make sure that if anybody has questions that they feel like they can ask. So
Thank you so much for your time, Carly. I gotta run to an appointment, but I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
great. Thanks, Maya. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
you.
Bye,
It's
you
good to meet-
guys. Oh, sorry. What's that, Jordan?
I said it was good to meet you. Bye.
Oh, nice to meet you too. Bye bye.